represented, Fremont's well represented, and Brentwood is well represented on this committee. And we're advisory, we have no power to change zoning, local zoning prevails in all of this. State regulations on waterfront, floodplains, we're advisory. And what I see the role of us is helping each community out, what works in your community, what doesn't work, new regulations, and then just promoting the river. A big part of what we do, I live on the river, I love the river, I live on the Swampscott. I think you take a different interest in the river when you live on it. We're all into water quality, which is paramount. And so, the committee, that's what we do. When a wetland permit comes in, which is, excavation near the waterfront, we look at it. The state has their process, which is very thorough and efficient. We might know something unique from our local community, we add to that. And we can't go and say anything needs to be stricter than basically what local zoning says, or the state regulations that are in place. We also look at shoreline permit, which is, there's a protected buffer area. We get involved in that when you need a permit on that. Like, after this meeting, the committee's going to look at a couple of permits, one in Exeter and one down in Stratham. So how did we get involved in this? Ellen Douglas, who's a Fremont rep, came up and said, this was going on. And it was kind of a really interesting situation where, part of it's in Brentwood, part of it's in Fremont. We saw ourselves as, okay, we're the river people, let's help out and let's get involved in that. So Ellen got people from UMass Boston, where she's a professor, and if you just look around the room, to me, I've done a lot of public meetings because I was involved in engineering and public utilities. There's a lot of great questions. It's emotional. A lot of questions we can't, answer, but I think they're out there. I think this is going to be a great session. So, as a result of this, FERDA is the Friends, which I think is admirable as a group of people.
It's actually Fremont Exeter River Dam
Association. Okay. See all these acronyms. It's great.
They have a secret handshake, I understand.
Oh, do they? Yeah. Do they? They eat pizza, I know that. So we're here. We have no opinion about should the dam stay, shouldn't it. We will probably never make a vote or recommendation. Probably never will come in front of us unless it's a wetland permit or a shoreline permit. Don, we never made a vote on the Great Dam removal, did we, in Exeter? ESLAC never voted on that. We didn't have to.
Much to my sorrow, you didn't. No.
Yeah, we didn't. So I mean,
much to Pete's sorrow.
Yeah. So we're simply trying to facilitate this, get the questions out. It sounds to me like most of you have met the great people from UMass Boston. I think it's great. I think one of the things we're going to see is try to all understand that there's different sides here. That's what I'll say now. So it's great to see you. What I always say, get out and enjoy the river if you're on the Exeter or on the other end down at Stratham Newfields. It's a great entity, part of what we're all about, and the history's there. And Alan's going to give us some history, and then Ken is going to facilitate. And thanks for coming.
So thanks for coming, everyone. Bill has given you an introduction. Next, we're going to have Ellen Douglas, who's a resident of Fremont and a hydrologist and a much revered professor of environmental science at UMass Boston. And then we're going to break into small groups. All the questions you see around you and in your packet were not hatched in the basement of the University of Massachusetts by those foreigners from Massachusetts, because we have to be concerned about them. These are all questions that came up several weeks ago when many of you were kind enough to welcome us into your homes as we went door to door to let you know about this meeting. So every question up there came from a resident of the Riverside, Tibbetts area. And what we're going to do in the small groups after Ellen gets us started with a little bit of history is to identify the most burning questions that you don't want to leave this room tonight without having a pretty good answer to. And we owe a great deal of gratitude to one of our local leaders, Rob Wolfchuck. Where's Rob? Over here. Okay.
From Brentwood.
From Brentwood, who I think promised a whole bunch of state officials a free dinner at the, what's that nice Irish restaurant you have nearby?
Oh,
At the Abbey.
No.
No, what's it called? The Holy Grail.
Holy Grail.
Holy Grail. And if you flip over to your packet, you'll see that we have folks from most of the public agencies that have the greatest experience with the river
Does anybody need a
and
packet?
dams. So what we're going to do in the small groups is to identify, out of this long list of 45 questions that you generated, the ones you want answered tonight before you leave. So we'll do a small group exercise to get at that. The balance of the questions are not going to be forgotten. In the next 4 weeks, we'll be back in touch with the agencies that are here to get answers to those questions. So it's sort of a two-part process. The most important questions we're going to try to answer tonight in the course of the next hour and a half or so. And then those items which you thought were important 2 weeks ago, we will get written responses to. All of this will be posted on a neat website that this young fellow here wearing the Cambridge hat, Michael Monestein, who in his day job is the mild-mannered executive director of the Central Square Business Improvement Association District in Cambridge, doing great work there, promoting that traditional neighborhood center. And in the evening, he goes to UMass Boston as a graduate planning student. In that role, he created a website for this project, which is cooperatively managed. It's an open source site. It's called I'llBeDamnedOrNot.com. And within a week, on I'llBeDamnedOrNot.com will be written summaries of all of the questions and answers we dealt with tonight. And then there'll also be a copy of the video. So if your wife or husband or former wife or girlfriend or insignificant other couldn't make it tonight, but you want to make sure they have access to it, the video will be up on the I'll Be Damned or Not site, and in the comment of your home, you can go through it. And then those questions that are on this list that we don't handle tonight, we will track down our colleagues who are here this evening from county, state, regional governments, and also 2 private contractors who were kind enough to come. Steve Smith, I met earlier, who's in the drilling, well, water business, and he also makes a mean cup of decaf coffee, most of which he drank. Yeah, so I guess we'll just go down the list. So we have Heidi Carlson. Yeah, where's Heidi?
Right here.
And she, in her day job, is the Fremont Town Administrator. And so she's responsible for everything in Fremont, let's just face it, okay? And then we have Karen Clement. Where's Karen?
She
Couldn't make it, okay. Don Clement, in the back. Don, give us your background.
I've been on the Conservation Commission for many, many years in Exeter. I'm currently chairman of the Board of Selectmen of Exeter, have been for 3 terms. So I was right there from the start. I was on the Exeter, also on the Exeter Swamp Trail Local Advisory. So I was there right from the start when we started the whole discussion about what to do with the dam in Exeter when we were issued our letter of position.
Great, thanks so much for coming, Don. And then we have James Gallagher.
He's not here.
He's not here, forget that, okay. We once had James Gallagher. And then Glenn Greenwood. Isn't he a country
Yes.
western singer?
Yes, back in the...
Yeah, he's not.
He's not, okay. But this Glenn Greenwood is from our Regional Planning Commission, yes?
Yes. Yes, and land use planner for Brentwood for many years.
Fantastic, great. Charlie Krautman. Charlie, do you want to introduce what you do at the NHDES Dam Bureau?
I'm a dam safety engineer. I inspect and assess all of the dams in the state that aren't hydropowers.
Fantastic, thanks for coming. Sherry Patterson?
Sheree.
Sheree.
Sheree, thank you. New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, I've been in the Marine Division for 40 years, been through many iterations dam projects, whether they were removed or not, as well as...
Can you speak up, please?
We can't hear you. As well as the general ecology of animals and fish in the area.
Fantastic. All things wild and not so wild, right? Our local ecologist, okay. Bill Thomas.
Spain, over here.
Okay.
So I'm Bill Thomas. I'm from the state of New Hampshire. I'm within the Dam Bureau, the Dam Removal and River Restoration Program. So I can assist people if they're interested in removing dams or doing river restoration, assist them through the process and permitting and find funding and those things.
Fantastic. And then Dana Truslow, who's a geohydrologist in the back.
Hi, Dana Truslow. I'm a hydrogeologist or geohydrologist, and work with many towns in the area, including Brentwood, on water quality, water resource protection, and groundwater, surface water interaction.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to turn it over now to Ellen, who's going to give us a little
The microphone on.
history of the dam, and and then we'll move into the small groups, and then we'll get our panel working.
So, welcome, thanks for coming. I'm a hydrologist, I love rivers, and I'm an engineer, so I can design dams. I've never designed one. So dams are really interesting to me, so I was very interested to understand the history of the Mill Road Dam from the Fremont file on the record. So, the dam was built in 1927, and it's approximately 130 feet long and 15 feet high. The impoundment behind it is 45 acres, and it has a fairly long history. In 1933, so it was built in 27, and the first record we have of someone owning it was 1933. But when things really started getting more interesting was 1951, when a man named Dustin, Mr. Dustin, bought the dam, and then he also bought all the property around the impoundment and sold lots and turned this into Dustin Shores. Has anybody heard the term Dustin Shores? Yeah. I hadn't until I read the file. So from 1951 to 1974, Mr. Dustin owned the dam and also and managed the impoundment for the people that he sold the lots to for Dustin Shores. So for 21 years, everything sort of went pretty well. And every year in October, he would drop the water level so people could get in and clean out the bottom. And he maintained the impoundment for recreation, and he also, as part of the properties, deeded access to the beach. But then in 1974, a man named Paul Phillips bought the dam from Mr. Dustin, and that sort of broke the connection between the people who lived next to the impoundment and the owner of the dam. And so in the 70s, so there began to be a little bit of controversy between, water level and people that were on the impoundment. So in the 1970s, the late 1970s, there was a group of 34 residents, probably from within the same area of Riverside Road and Tibbetts Road, that tried to work with Mr. Phillips to develop. He wanted them to pay him an annual fee for maintaining the water level, like anywhere from $600 to $1,000 a year. So for a few years, they tried to work out an arrangement, but it doesn't look like from the file that was successful. So in the late 70s, there were some issues with, as we've had now, with the water level being dropped and people's wells going dry, and some controversy between the dam owner and the impoundment abutters. And in 1980, do we have, nope, I guess not. So in 1986, actually, the state of New Hampshire decided that all the dams in the state needed to put protection around the dam and the property, because people were actually like jumping off of them into the impoundment, and they were worried about liability and safety issues around the dam. So in 1986, the state made all dam owners put some sort of protection around the dam. Then there wasn't much that went on until until 1996. In October of 1996, does anybody remember what happened in southeastern New Hampshire in 1996? We had a lot of rain. We had 12 inches of rain in like a 24-hour period, and so not just this particular dam, but all the rivers and southeastern New Hampshire low areas ended up being flooded. So that started a round of conversations between the dam owner, the impoundment abutters, and the state of New Hampshire looking into issues about dam operation. And then again in 2007 and 2010, 2006 and 2010, we also had flooding events. So periodically, the dam and its issues has come up either as a town issue or as a state issue. In 2006, again, the state came out and looked because once again, the dam was overtopped because of the flooding. We had the Mother's Day storm. Anybody remember the Mother's Day storm? And then the following April, we had the Patriots' Day storm. So we were having events on holidays, which is in some way kind of convenient, but not really. So the dam has actually periodically come up with some concerns and issues. And so here we are in 2017 with you all, the abutters received a letter from the owner in May stating that he was looking for some options either to sell the dam or to remove the dam. And that's when, as part of ESRLAC, I heard about it, got involved, and as a hydrologist, I was really interested in understanding how this process goes. We met with the ESRLAC group, and we formed this ESRAC, the Exeter-Squamish River Educational Partnership, so that we could bring information to the group. And so that's basically the short history of the dam and how we got here today. I apologize that it's so hot in here. It was cool in here when we got in here, but we had to leave the door open because it kept sticking. So the air conditioner is on, so hopefully it will continue to cool down over the evening. So how are we doing on the...
We're doing
Great. That's a short history of the dam.
excellent. Terrific. So in order to identify what the questions were, as I mentioned, we went ahead and did this door-to-door survey in the area to basically 150 homes who are considered abutters. And the first question we asked, among the first questions, is do you feel as though you have enough information to make a fully informed decision about or preference as to what should be done? And 78% of the folks we asked, roughly 40 households, so 3/4 of them, said that they didn't. They felt that they needed more information. And a quarter said that they felt they had all the information they needed. So that was sort of the genesis of this meeting. We then went and asked people for their questions. They're up on the wall. There are 45 of them. And we can't obviously answer all 45 this evening. So what we want to do next in small groups is to have you identify 3 of the list of items on the poster nearest your table that is most critical to you. And then we're going to quickly go around each table and answer those questions with the help of our resource persons so that we fully answer as many of those as possible. We think we'll probably end up doing 2 or maybe 3 rounds, getting to maybe 24 or 30 of the questions. The remainder of them we will then do in writing, and you'll be able to check the website in 30 days and get those full responses. Nick, sound good? Sound like a plan? Mm-hmm. All right, okay, so we're now going to break into the small groups, and we have table number 1. Realize that the questions are somewhat arbitrarily organized, so you may not get the questions that are most important to you and your table. Don't worry, this is just to narrow it down. So table number 1 deals with the current status of the Mill River Dam and legal issues, and that's going to be facilitated by Georgia and Martin, 2 of our absolutely brightest planning students. So we need 6 folks to help them out. So you think we could get the 3 of you right there, and the 3 of you, perhaps Eric and our Beverly Natalie and Bruce to be table 1, just for the next 10 minutes.
Bring your chair,
And bring your chair.
please.
Okay. Table number 2 is around here somewhere.
Back here, Ken.
Back in this corner. Table number 2. Here. All right, here we go. Here we go. And that's being facilitated by George and Randy. This is the benefits and costs of keeping versus removing the dam, and the process for resolving the Mill Road dam issue. So we have 6 people. Looks like a perfect group right here. 10,
You guys want to meet?
Craig, and 4 of you over in this corner. Next, table 3
Yes.
is over here. That's a possible future of the Mill Road Dam. So we need a very smart group here to figure this out. So ma'am, would you mind being part of table 3? And over here, and how about the back benchers here?
So you want to?
Yeah, sure. Okay, table 3. All right? Table 4, this is flooding history and concerns. Table 4. So let's do these 3 and Patrick. You're at table 4, and you're being facilitated by Rochelle, I believe, and Michael. Okay, table 5 is back there. That's the local government's role in resolving this, and water supply and water quality issues. And you'll be working with Kristen and Patrick. Be very nice to Patrick. He just got married on Friday, and I think he's still in a little bit of shock. So, only tell happy stories at table 5. Okay, so that's Roger and Patty and Jesse and Laura and Tariq, Forest Properties. You're at table 5. Okay. Don't be afraid. All right. Then we have table 6. And we're so smart, we're going to do 6 and Okay, it's good to have friends. Well, first of all, thank you very much for working so hard. We're actually 9 minutes ahead of schedule. It's in New Hampshire, just on top of things, That's right. So we're going to start with group 1, which had 2 categories. They were the current status of the Mill Road Dam and legal issues. And the first question that they wanted answered, are there any concrete steps being taken to currently repair the existing dam in order to restore the river to its historic depths? If so, what steps have or are being taken? And if no steps are being taken, why not? So this is a question, what's being done, if anything, to restore the gate and allow the river level to go up to its most recent historical level?
So Heidi Carlson from the, will you be able to?
I can't answer that question.
Okay, so I don't believe the dam owner is here. We asked to get, we asked.
Chuck?
Well, no, I mean, we talked to someone in Colorado, so anyway, but Heidi did get some information from the legal team that you may be able to share about the current status.
So I'll share that. I can read this email that I got. But I know that we had a meeting this summer,
Several of the homeowners were there. It was in response to a letter that the owner had, or the owner's attorney had sent out that said, I'm going to sell the dam if you want to buy it. It felt a little threatening to some of us who read it. But there was a meeting that was held at the attorney's office. I'm pretty sure it was in July, like the second week of July.
14th.
Yeah. And there was probably 20 or so residents and homeowners that were there. The discussion at that time was that the homeowners association was for the folks that probably have now formed. Jonathan, I'm going to look at you because you were there.
Yeah, we're officially incorporated in the state of New Hampshire at this point.
And you guys were going to start talking to the owner about costs to restore it and doing that. I don't know if that's going
Yeah, well, we asked him, can we put workmen on site? He came back with, are you a bonded contractor? Which there's different ways to read what that means, but it ultimately amounts to we were not able to put workmen on site. And after that, we stopped talking to them until recently. They've come back with a different position, and we're reevaluating our stance.
Okay. So I thought that you might have some more.
I don't think anything's being done to repair the dam currently. I don't think that getting it repaired from a physical standpoint is actually going to be all that difficult. I don't think it's nearly as broken as advertised, but I will not tell you how I come by that information. And so until we can get workmen on site, as far as I know, no one's doing anything.
And we will communicate. I spoke to the owner's son who's out west, and I said, we may have questions that come up tonight. Would you be in a position to then respond to those? He said, absolutely. So we'll make sure that this question gets put to the owner following this meeting. So that was question number one.
Can I just add?
Sure.
The part of the letter of deficiency, the repair of the gate was one of their immediate requirements, the Dam Bureau's immediate requirements. What they've done with that, I don't know, but that was one of the immediate requirements that they were required to remediate it.
So I think we've shared everything that we know. Maybe Heidi has another comment, and then we will follow up with the dam owner tomorrow.
I don't know if this is appropriate now. There were 3 questions on the original listing of questions that had to do with legal issues. And I called the owner's attorney's office yesterday to ask some of those questions. I did not presume that they were going to answer me. And on the phone, they did not give me a lot of information. There was a lot of kind of legal answers like it depends and those sort of things. Right before I came here tonight, I opened an email that was from Steve Roberts, who is Mr. Inue's attorney, and he had held that meeting that we had back there in July. I'm happy to read this. He asked, at the end of it, he says, please share this, please pass along this information at the meeting this evening. And he goes on to some other stuff. So I would like to read it in full if people don't mind that. It's 3 questions, it's a little bit of answers to them and some other kind of information. Doesn't answer everything. It's addressed to myself and Charlie.
Do you want to stand up?
Charlie, did you see this tonight? Okay. So it says Heidi/Charlie, please allow this to address certain issues relating to the Brentwood Dam. A representative of the owner, Brentwood Dam Ventures LLC, will not be present at the meeting this evening. After review of the many detailed questions, which we received less than 24 hours ago, I forwarded that to them yesterday, it's clear that there are significant legal and other issues that Brentwood Dam Ventures will not be able to address. Neither Attorney Baum nor I are able to attend due to pre-existing commitments. We were not consulted as to the date and time of the meeting. As to the specific legal issues posed, we provide the following responses. First question was, for many abutters, their property line ends 15 to 20 feet from the current river's edge. Who owns the property beyond our property line to the river? Answer, we do not know. An answer would require a title search of the various properties. Brentwood Dam Ventures LLC does not own that property. See deed attached and excerpt from the Brentwood tax map, which I have a copy of. It's very small. It's not like I could circulate it, but the next question was, if a recreational sportsman injures himself while on the bank and/or the river, who is legally responsible for his injuries? Answer, it depends on the circumstances of the event. Generally speaking, a landowner does not owe a duty of care to keep premises safe for use by others for outdoor recreational activities. See RSA 212-34 and RSA 508-14 attached. There are exceptions to those statutory immunity provisions, and we encourage any prospective landowner to consult an attorney concerning this issue. Lastly, the question was, who is responsible for maintaining and cleaning up the exposed riverbank areas? Answer, we do not know. Perhaps the owner of the exposed riverbank. Brentwood Dam Ventures LLC does not own that property. Other attendees may be able to address the process that occurred for the Exeter Great Dam removal. Then there's just another 2 paragraphs here unrelated to those questions. I want to make it clear to the state/DES, the town, and the abutters that Brentwood Dam Ventures LLC has determined that transfer of ownership of the dam to the abutters or similar group is in the best interest of all parties. Brentwood Dam Ventures LLC would be willing to convey ownership of all right, title, and interest of the dam and related property to the abutters for nominal consideration, i.e. $1. Please pass along this information at the meeting this evening. I would be willing to sit down with a representative of the abutters to discuss the transfer of ownership. And it's from Stephen Roberts, who's an attorney at Heffel, Phoenix, Gormley, and Roberts in Portsmouth. So I'm also happy that, he sent this to me and asked me to read it in what's obviously a public forum, so I'm happy to post this. And I think he sent me the 2 statutes and a copy of the Brentwood tax map. I'll put this up on the town's website or send it to you. I'll PDF it all and send it if you want to put it on the I'll Be Damned site. You have to do that, just so that the information is there.
Great, Heidi, thank you very much.
So is there anybody else that has any comments or thoughts on?
From the Dam Bureau's perspective, we issued a letter of deficiency in August. The owner had 45 days to respond whether or not he agrees with the deficiencies that we've identified and the dates that we proposed. We're talking with him, but he hasn't officially responded. So in the next week or so, we'll probably take the next course of action, which is an administrative order, which will potentially fine him if he doesn't tell us how he's going to proceed with the dam.
I think one issue that came up, and I don't know if we have anybody who can comment on this, if the river stays at its more economical width, and there is new exposed property in the Great Dam situation, was there any resolution of who owned that property between the existing abutter's property line and what appears, at least for the moment, to be the new water line?
Well, again, it's a river, and the state really owns it. The river is owned by the citizens of the state. So the property lines typically would go to the high water, mean high water mark of the river. So when we did this in Exeter, the property, it was riverfront property. Some of that was exposed, of course, as the river was narrowed, but we in Exeter, as part of the program, we seeded all the new exposed riverbank. So we seeded at the expense of the town of Exeter did that. So we.
You mean grass?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
With material, so, but there are some parts of another area, this area going back 300, 400 years. There are some old deeds that actually talk about some of these properties going to the middle of the river.
So it's a real deed.
Old deeds might have some different, I don't know what, all the deeds are, so you actually somebody has to look at the deeds. But when Exeter also had the situation that many, many years ago, the Exeter Manufacturing Company, the mill, who owned the original dams, Exeter's Dam and Pickpocket Dam, not only bought the dams, but they bought those water rights all upriver, even as a Brentwood, by the way. So they bought all those water rights, so they, in effect, own the riverbanks and the water in the river.
Okay, we're going to move on to table 2. Thank you very much, table 1.
Before we do that, Kim.
Sure.
Can I ask Charlie something?
Absolutely.
If the dam owner's response to your bureau is he intends to sell the dam, does that absolve him from the letter of deficiency and any other action from the Dam Bureau?
I mean, selling the dam could take years and years. It needs to provide us an outline with dates on, I intend to sell it, I'll allow 6 months for that, but ultimately I'm going to remove it or reconstruct it if I can't sell it.
What was I couldn't hear that.
He needs to provide us a timeline moving forward. If he intends to sell it, he has maybe 6 months, a year to do that, but if he can't sell it, he needs to either reconstruct it or remove it.
It's been on the market for a long time, not anyway.
Right, it just came under the state of New Hampshire's jurisdiction in January because he lost his hydropower license through FERC.
Okay, let's move on to table 2. Thank you very much, our research people. Table 2 has a number of clusters. The first one, is it possible to get an accurate estimate of likely costs of bringing this dam into compliance with existing law to address the issues identified in the state-issued letter of deficiency?
Estimated cost to bring it into compliance?
Yes.
It's hard to say, it's a case-by-case situation with all these dams, but at a minimum, I'll say 6 figures, but it can easily be 7 figures.
So I went to Catholic schools, and my math is 100,000 to a million.
Thousands of dollars to a million.
To a million.
Easily.
So, I don't know if anybody's interested, but I went to the Exeter River dam removal site, and they did a feasibility study before, when they started that process, and came up with costs to stabilize the dam and to repair the dam and bring it up to code, and to remove the dam. And so if anybody's interested, I can share with you some of those costs, just so you have an idea. I mean, obviously, it's a different dam. So the Exeter Dam was 136 feet long. This dam is 130 feet long. The Exeter Dam was 16 feet high. This one's 15. So very similar size. And so for stabilization in place, which I don't think is really an option, but it was one of the options they looked at, that was $400,000. Well, just for the construction cost.
But was that a hydro, like this one is?
All costs combined, engineering costs, construction and so forth. That was the low cost with the mission.
Right. Okay.
But was that a hydro dam?
No.
So the 6 to 7 figure, is that to repair as a hydro
That
or
has
just?
nothing to do with hydropower.
Nothing, just to make it functional.
Yeah, under the state.
Under the code.
The FERC license was surrendered on this, so it's not currently a hydro.
Okay, good.
Right.
I think Ellen has some
Yes.
figures that she might just want to briefly run
Okay,
through.
so just the stabilize in place, which wasn't do anything except make it so that it wouldn't fall down and flow downstream. Just the construction costs, I don't know if you can see this, were about $420,000 for including construction contingency engineering. The cost for actually bringing the dam up to code, so dam reconstruction for the Exeter Dam, just the construction and engineering costs were $1 million. That was to bring it, that was to put in a gate, put in an Overmeyer Crest gate, which is one option. That was $200,000 alone. That might not be necessary. So this is information that I got out of the feasibility study. And then, so those are that's sort of the range of what that particular dam cost, estimates before they actually started the construction.
There was a hand over here, Bob.
I mean, they had to do a feasibility study to get that. I think the important question is, even to get to that point, how much is a feasibility, what would be the first steps? You need to hire someone to even come up with a feasibility study. Is there any sense of what an expense would be to just do the analysis to even get to the point where you can make a decision?
And Exeter probably allocated several $100,000 to start doing these studies. By the way, these studies are anticipated studies, then you got to put this stuff out to bid. Sending out the bid and what you think it's going to cost, the bid usually comes in higher. I don't know where you get those costs, but the final cost to do the stabilization, when everything was done, because there's a lot of things that had to be done. You just couldn't stabilize the dam. What was the impact of below dam and above dam and stabilization? Those costs have to be factored in.
Right, so I
it's more than just
I didn't include any of
Yeah.
the infrastructure, the water.
But
supply.
every dam situation is
Right,
different.
exactly.
So the other costs associated with stabilization
Right.
might be different here in Brentwood than they were in Exeter.
Yeah, there was another $800,000 in infrastructure and
Yeah.
so it's mitigation costs.
Every dam is different. Well, you've gone through that because you had Winnicott Dam, the Exeter Dam, so every dam has got a different situation, so.
But it's several mortgages. I meant to put it into cost of median, into a fraction of the, or multiples of the median cost of houses, and just ran out of time.
So then, I think we have a comment here, that we have 2 more questions from table 2, then we'll move on to table 3. Our colleague with the striped shirt? Hold on.
I mean, I guess I would say that Heidi could publish the phone number for Stephen Roberts. He's obviously a brilliant attorney if he can coerce somebody into, for $1 to assume $1 million plus liability.
He's not gonna want people calling him. I can tell you that.
Brilliant little mind can pull it off.
Okay. Good point. Over here.
Can I just ask Alan, what, are we talking apples to apples with the conditions of the 2 dams? I realize they're similar in size, but Exeter's was municipally owned. Wasn't it maintained better, or?
It didn't pass the 50-year flood. They had the same issues as this. It was the only information. I called some consultants to get an idea, and and they said the same thing that you'd expect. Every dam is different, and the costs are different. So he suggested that I didn't get a chance to look at the Winnicott, which might have been another dam to look at costs. So the Winnicott Dam in is that in Greenland has been removed recently. That's another one that you could look at. If you wanted to get an idea of costs, you could Google Winnicott Dam feasibility study and get a range of estimates for costs on the estimates for that as well.
And that also was over $1 million.
Yeah.
Question about the funding. Is there anything that was the state revolving fund, or grants, or anything that was chased as reimbursement for either the study or for the removal?
For the dam removal, they got $800,000.
Yes, we did go a secret. We got about $600,000 from NOAA, National Oceanographic Group, for dam removal. Money from Fish and Game, money from BES, and some other state money, mitigation money, I think. For the ARM fund. So all in all, Exeter's final total for the dam removal and ancillary work came to about $1.8 million. That was the bond that the Exeter citizens passed to remove the dam. We've gotten back a little over $800,000 of grant money. So there is some money. As we looked at it, by the way, we were trying to look at grant money, we found that there was a greater availability for grant money for dam removal than there was for dam reconstruction. But that was the nature.
Okay, moving right along. Thanks very much, Don, for that information. The next question from the Team 2 is, are there good examples of successful dam preservation from New Hampshire and/or elsewhere?
What do you mean by successful?
Well, many of them been preserved.
The dam's still
You guys
there.
keep talking about all of these dams that have been removed and the amount of money that's out there to remove one. Does anyone have an example of one that was saved?
Charlie, and then we'll move down.
We received, on average, about 15 permits to reconstruct a year. And so, yeah, on average, I'd say it's about 15 dams are reconstructed. They vary in size, length, etc.
And that's just for the state of New Hampshire?
Yes.
Interesting. 15, you said that?
On average, 15.
15 out of how many?
How many? 250 you had said?
There's
280?
2,600 on our registry.
And Charlie, is there any national resource group, if someone were into trying to pursue dam preservation, who do you call? Who's the Ghostbuster of dam preservation? Is there a go-to organization, or 2 or 3 of them? Well, for technical assistance and perhaps some guidance on funding.
I mean, we go out and inspect the dams, depending on their hazard classification, every 2, 4, or 6 years. In the case of Exeter River Dam, it's a significant hazard, so we inspect it every 4 years and produce a report, this letter of deficiency. From there, we ask the owner if it's deficient in whatever capacity that they use a consultant, an engineer that's qualified in the state of New Hampshire to assess their dam and reconstruct it, redesign it.
our colleague from Fish and Wildlife.
Well, Fish and Game,
I'm
but
sorry.
no, Charlie answered the question.
And in your collective memory, is there an example that stands out in your mind where an owner either attempted to step away or did step away and a community came forward on a preservation effort? A small community like we're talking about?
Yeah, there's a couple of cases that were posted on the website that homeowner association came in and took responsibility for the dam and reconstructed it.
Great, and is that the,
I think that's on the town website, yes, Charlie sent me those.
so the town of Fremont
Yep, on the homepage. there's a
website?
Set up for, it says Mill Road Dam. It's on our homepage.
Three examples.
There was a, I don't remember, there was a few on there.
Fantastic. Okay, I think that hits Group 2's second question. And then the third one, is there a public process that will be engaged to determine the future of this dam? Is there any public hearing, review process, there are regular agencies, do they weigh in on this? And does the citizens have a chance to voice their opinion?
If they, depending on if they choose to remove it or rebuild it, it'd be a wetlands permit involved for doing that. So you need a permit through the State of New Hampshire Wetlands Bureau to do a reconstruction or removal of the dam. So there's a butter notification in that process, with potentially public notice, with potentially public hearings. It's not guaranteed, but it's potentially to be a hearing. And depending whatever the local town, it could be a conditional use permit to the town. That's one way the residents could speak to the process, if it actually gets the permitting.
Terrific. So there's a state of New Hampshire permit process. Abutters will be notified. There'll be a chance for at least public comment into the record, maybe a hearing.
But typically at that point, you've already decided that it's either going to be rebuilt or removed. That's what the permit's in for. So they've already chosen their option at that point. So if people have concerns or comments on the design, what's going to happen, it's on them. I don't know what the local building is happening.
Don, did you have an additional
No,
comment?
no, I mean, that about sums it up, because you've got to go through a permitting process, but at that point, it's a permit for whatever direction you chose. You take it, yeah.
Great. Well, again, thank you very much for that information. This is Team 3, title under Possible Features of the Mill Road Dam. And it looks like number 1 is and that is it feasible to get the dam up and running, i.e. restore it to its historic condition? What would be the likely cost of doing so? I think we've sort of covered that, yes? Didn't we just go over that? So that,
we also have what might be possible to do hydropower, and I think this one.
okay, and then so the second question was, since there does appear to be some historic hydropower use for this at the dam, is there any feasibility of getting that re-engaged?
That's done through the PERC, and I think that's a burdensome process. I can't really speak to what would be involved in the studies, but they might have to include like fish passage and to relicense it for hydropower. I'm not sure, but to get it up and running would be hundreds of thousands of dollars as well, just the legal fees and such.
And this dam was, until very recently, sort of under their review, under their regulation. It only came back to the state very recently when they made no progress on restoring the hydropower. Okay? All right, and then the third question you had?
If they were transferred to new owners, would they be responsible for restoring it to good working order?
Yeah, so the other question is, if someone else took it over, like the resident association or other local entity, would it be their obligation to restore it to quote-unquote good working order, i.e. minimal state standards, or is that something the owner has to do before transfer?
If it was transferred to someone else, they would have to follow the same letter of deficiency.
So if a dollar looked like a good deal and you were willing to pay, you too could have the full responsibility of restoring everything to the legal limits. Wow. Okay, that's table 3. Moving on to table 4 is right behind our middle resource person, our well guy, and this is flood history and concerns and ecological impacts. And there looks to be a lot of dots here under, if the dam is removed, I think we covered this, who is responsible for maintaining the flood levels to prevent future damage to riverside property. If the dam is removed, who's responsible for addressing, I guess, stormwater management in this stretch of the river?
Downstream or upstream or whatever?
I think one of the questions related to, at least that I heard when I interviewed people, was if the dam is removed, would it affect the flooding, the potential for flooding along the river? Did your hydraulic analysis address that at all?
Well, I can start by saying my H&H analysis was conservative. I looked at it with and without the dam. It looked like the water levels did go down a little bit without the dam, but the 107 crossing is kind of a bottleneck.
Yeah.
So that would still flood considerably. You really have to talk to FEMA about assessing the floodplain, the changes. There's a process and application to do that.
And is that triggered by like the failure of the gate currently? And does the state do that automatically, notify FEMA that a reevaluation of the flood maps, et cetera, are needed? Or does the local municipality or the citizens have to do
I
it?
think the citizens have to do it.
Or the local. We've just in the process of doing that in Exeter. There's the FEMA maps released. Remember the FEMA maps determine whether you're in a floodplain, a 100-year floodplain of a river, which then may or may not require you to purchase federal flood insurance, which as everyone knows is not inexpensive. With the dam out, we then fired a letter which is called a LOMAR, Letter of Map Revision. We did an analysis, analyzed the river floodplain with the dam being out. Those numbers and that information is in the process of being forwarded to FEMA to see if they will accept that, and if they'll probably back and forth, but the bottom line is they will then reissue a new FEMA floodplain map, which we believe will alter the flooding, the flood zone upriver. So it is a process that the municipality goes through. That they don't have to, but it's in the best interest of the citizens to do that.
In some cases, there's the funding to do, like there's removal. In some cases, you're required to do the letter of map revision, even though it's removing properties. Typically, it removes properties out of the flood zone.
Right.
So in some cases, you're required to do it. In other cases, homeowners choose to have it done because a lot of times it gets them to have flood insurance.
Is that revision a pan-town thing? Like, would it be Fremont and Brentwood, or would it be town by town, each town submits their own letter?
I'm not sure what it is. Just what's effective.
You only did it for Exeter. Okay.
Well, yes, we did, because that's, the change in the river.
Yeah, it's the area that's affected by the dam.
Yeah.
So it could be, whatever, I don't know how far that would go. Typically, it'd be the area that's had the reduced flood elevation.
It's based on the FEMA maps.
Right.
I don't know if the FEMA maps are issued municipality by municipality.
I'm sure.
Probably at the county level.
The counties, they're issued by county.
By county.
So what Charlie said, as hydrologists and engineers, we would suspect that the bridge on 107 is probably causing more of a backup of water under flooding conditions than the dam would be. So it's likely that dam is causing a bit of water to back up, but the bridge that's upstream of the dam is likely, which wouldn't be gone regardless of what happens to the dam, would still cause backwater and flooding effects upstream of that.
Okay, moving right along. The next question is, this is a handwritten one. What will happen to the bird and animal life, the overall ecology of the immediate area surrounding the dam if it is not repaired?
So the river system will revert back to a run of river, to its natural flows that come out through the headwaters. So it'll just adapt, like everywhere else. We've had dam removal projects. It adapts like everywhere else. We've had dam removal projects. Sometimes the fish community will change from fast water fish, trout and such, to if you have,
Minnows.
or the remaining warm water species. As for the birds adapt also. All the wildlife adapts to changes in elevations of water. And these gates have been lifted, for 2 years now?
No, just really since April, April, May.
Of this year? Yeah.
It was low last year, too,
And I
though.
see that there is, you have plant growth on the banks, so it's reverting back to the kind of system that was there before the dam.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am?
It's my understanding that river has a mollusk that's on the endangered listing. What happens
If you're
there?
talking about the floater, the brook floater.
I'm not sure what it is, I just know it's a mollusk.
Which is a mussel. That was seen in 1957, and it's currently believed that
They're
that has
gone?
been extirpated from the Exeter River, not just from this particular stretch, but from the Exeter River. This river has bridle shiner, which are threatened, but from what we saw today, when we were out there, you have conditions that will continue to support bridle shiners habitat, and your birds that feed on fish will still be coming. That won't be a problem.
The peepers aren't there anymore.
I'm sorry?
The peepers are all gone, just about.
Peepers.
The little frogs and in the spring and the fall. We don't have them that long anymore.
In the back, and then we have one more question for group 4, and then we'll move on to 5. We're making good progress.
I don't see the river actually flowing anymore, so I don't understand how there can even be fish there.
Yeah, it's only about a foot deep.
It's flowing. I mean, where we were down by the dam today, it was definitely flowing. Dams don't create water. Rivers create water, so.
Yeah, even when the impoundment's full, the same amount of river discharge is still moving downstream, so it just appears different because it's a riverine environment now instead of an impounded environment.
Fish don't live in rivers.
Fish don't live in what?
Mud.
Well, again, you've got water there.
Catfish do.
So this time here in August, September is what hydrologists like me call low flow season. So you may recall that we haven't gotten a lot of rain over the last couple of months, right? So most of the water that you see in the river right now is groundwater fed. And so that's what we call base flow. So I think if you go back in your memory, you may find that at this time of year, the river's pretty low to begin with, and now it's especially low because the impoundment isn't there. But, come next spring, even if the dam, the gate is still open, the river will be substantially larger because we'll have, hopefully, snow runoff and spring rains. So this time you'd expect it to be very, very low just because of the base flow conditions.
Okay, moving right along. The next write-in question was, a number of nearby abutters have experienced problems with accessing their well water, that the levels appear to have dropped. Is that, yes?
Some have gone out.
Some are gone completely dry. So what, if anything, is being done or could be done to bring water to this neighborhood, which is now experiencing difficulties with shallow wells because of the drop in the water level in the river?
People are getting cool water delivered and dumped into their wells.
Dumped into the wells?
Yeah.
So we have two hydrologists here. Can you guys address that?
Yeah, I can't address what's being done, but if we can kind of address, actually, probably between us, what could be done. If the river level is going to stay low, those shallow wells are going to continue to have problems providing water, just because even if, as the water levels rise in springtime, you're at a significantly lower level than you would have with the impoundment. So that may be a problem. So an alternative is to put in a deeper well, a bedrock well, which will be larger diameter, deeper, more storage, which of course will require paying for a well driller to come in and put in a well, but that would give you permanent access to water. There are, community water systems tend to be pretty expensive. It's also because they're small lots, there don't seem to be a lot of area for that, but that could be assessed. But it's quite a process to go through that. And if you have, I think it's greater than 10 homes that are serviced on a water supply, it's considered a community water system, and then it has to go through a DES permitting process and long-term maintenance and so on and so forth. So that's a possibility. Some homes could share a well without going into a community water system possibility. If you had, you know, especially if some of these homes seem to be just summer homes.
So like $3 million for a community well, minimum?
I really couldn't begin to guess. That seems a little bit on the high side. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit more.
It's probably a little on the high side, but probably not excessively. I mean, a community system has to be engineered, wells drilled, pump tested, samples. All the streets have to be torn up and water mains run up and down the streets. It would certainly, I would assume, and that's, my job does not take me into the economics of building these systems, but I would certainly think $1 million and up. As far as individual wells, lot loading on some of them with septics is going to become an issue with DES, although I don't think I have ever been refused to drill a well. I can't imagine DES is going to come in and say, I'm sorry, ma'am, you tear your house down because we won't allow a well on the property. We'll find some way around it.
You're referring to the 75 feet between the septic and the well?
75? 70, yes, the old standing rule was 75 feet from the septic and 75 feet from the property lines. We recently adopted some new rules that allow us to encroach on the property lines. Some of these lots are probably too small to get equipment onto, and I would like to hope that because everybody's in the same situation, there'll be cooperation between landowners that I can drive across his land to get to yours. And drilling rig is the biggest piece of equipment that ever needs to be in there. Other than that, it's going to be smaller service equipment. So hopefully that wouldn't need to be something that would need to be.
What's the weight on a drilling rig? What, 5 tons?
Drill rig weighs about 70,000 pounds, 35 ton. About 38, 40 feet long, turns like a battleship, makes a big mess.
Okay, so no one would ever let you drive in the bed?
On the bed?
The bed of the river.
Yeah.
Oh, the river.
No. Oh, the riverbed.
The exposed riverbed is currently the only access to certain people's wells due to the hill, and 75 feet from the property line when the property is 50 feet wide is kind of hilarious.
Right.
So one would assume that you could grandfather yourself into your existing well hole, but if it's on the wrong side of the house, the downhill side, and you can't drive on the exposed riverbed with a 30-ton machine here?
I would assume that if it is currently a drilled type well, and if the river has impacted it, that well was improperly constructed to begin with, because the river should not impact a properly constructed drill well, so I would want to put a drill rig on that well anyways. Now, if it's a dug well, or a point, or a wash well, or a gravel pack well, any of these surface water wells are impacted quickly by water level changes and local hydrology.
Yeah, basically what you have there is sand adjacent to the river out to a certain width, out to a certain depth. So that's where these shallow wells are drawing from. So as the water drops, the sand, allows the water to flow fairly freely. So it's going to be impacted by, changes up and down in that river level for, going forward.
How quickly do those changes adjust? If you haven't gone dry yet, should you expect to go dry?
I'll have to be legal on this and say it depends. It really depends on the geology right at your...
What's the longest hydrology lag between change in environment and change in water table that you've seen in the past?
I would typically
it really
expect,
depends on the...
yeah, but I would expect it very quick.
Yeah, within a month.
Yeah, and that depends on how far from the river you are. And local rain events.
So pretty much anyone who hasn't gotten dry yet is probably good.
Probably good, except the gentleman we stopped to see today.
Eric Klamarzik, treasurer, Woods Tavern Condos, 2 River Road, Brentwood, 980 Main Street, Fremont. The town line goes right through the middle of our building. We went dry today.
Do you have an artesian, you drill?
Dug well.
Well, yeah.
Did you have a mechanical failure, or is there no water in the well?
The lack of water caused mechanical failure.
Okay.
They repaired it, we got 12 inches of water in the bottom. We survived last summer's drought.
Well, the combination of low water, as Ellen said, plus the river drop is probably just doing it in at the moment.
Well, it's,
And that it's done, correct?
Well, that,
Yes.
because of the
Because it's
situation, because it's a shallow well, yeah.
But some of us, like I have an artesian 580 feet down, I've had not a single issue.
If the well is constructed properly, that river should not be impacting your well, period.
No, it has to be.
A drill.
Rob? Did you have something else, sir?
no, that's it. It's just a nightmare. Oh, I adapted. I took a shower with baby wipes. We have to adapt.
I mean, maybe for Glenn, do you know on a smaller lot if there have been exceptions made for a new well going in and not meeting all those setback requirements?
Yeah.
So it would be likely.
I'm gonna say, I've never heard of it not being allowed.
Yeah.
And in a lot of communities, at the local level, the health officer can make that call. And I've never experienced a health officer saying there isn't a location to be found on the site, ever.
Usually the answer is, do the best you can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to 5, and we just have 2 more. I'm sorry, missed somebody?
If you're having issues, experiencing with issues with your wells, please report it to the Drinking Water Bureau, Department of Environmental Services. As of a few weeks ago, we heard through hearsay people are having issues, but no reports had come in, so please report them.
Will reports give you arm twisting horsepower to affect the situation, or is it just nice to have the information?
It's nice to have a documented issue and problem that's actually recorded and people know. If they want to go look at it, they can look at it and try to assess what the situation is too.
But
And
could
maybe
that-
assistance too.
Does that force the homeowners to do something that they could not possibly afford?
I don't know.
Negative impact.
I don't
It
know
could
why
probably
it would,
keep you
but
from being able to sell.
I don't know why it would. I don't know for sure.
The group, perhaps the group ought to take a look at the Mill Pond development, which is just east of your property in Brentwood. It's the 55 and older community there. And that was put in, probably 7 or 8, 10 years ago now. And they have a community well system there. But it's not like big force mains like in Exeter. And I can't believe that they pay anywhere near $1 million. I mean, but you can check with the town can give you the name of that water company that manages that well and install the product. You might find that there's less expensive solutions than a multi-million
How many
dollar-
lots?
There must be
47 units.
How many?
47.
47 units. Okay.
If I may, there is a huge difference between building this infrastructure while you're building the development, as opposed to going up and digging up State Route 107.
Well, there's no state roads. I think those are all private roads, correct, in your development? I mean, not Mill Pond.
There's really 3 sections of people. There's people who live south of 107, there's people who live on Riverside, and there's people who live on Tibbetts, and all of those territories are completely different. And the idea that you'd ever get a main across the river or across 107, I find kind of hilarious.
Oh, yeah, I don't pretend that, I know anything about it. I'm just saying I would encourage you to look at that water company to see how they might.
That's not the answer we're currently looking for.
No, I understand.
Okay, let's move on to number 5 is over here. It looks like they've got clusters around a couple of things. I think we've just covered this. Is there any estimate of the likely cost for abutters who either individually or collectively have to dig a new and deeper well? I think we've covered as much as we can on that. So that was the item number 1. Second item they had down, given the very small size of many of your abutters' lots, which may cause local drillers problems in digging deeper wells, is there anything the town can do to facilitate access? I think we covered that as well, yes? Okay. And then on the top, you have 2 things. Historically, the impounded water above the dam played a role in local fire suppression and firefighting. how do the local fire departments plan to address what appears to be the loss of a permanent fire pond?
Is Brentwood Fire Department here today?
No. I'm assuming their answer would be, we have 5 trucks. What do you want? I don't know how many of those are tank trucks, but if you look at their garage, there's 5 bays. If that's not enough.
9 bays.
9 bays.
Okay, so we don't have that expertise tonight, but Heidi may have something additionally to say.
Well, I would just add to that, I think both Brentwood and Fremont Fire Departments obviously have water that's, stored in trucks, and when trucks leave the station, they have water on them. In Fremont, it would be, I meant to talk about my fire chief about this today. I have some experience in the fire service, but I would not think we have used, and people who've been there a long time can correct me, that we probably do not use that physical location, like you could not drop a pump off and get enough water, gravity-wise, to pump from, let's say, the bridge right there at 107. If there's a fire at someone's house and you need a floating pump or something, that's obviously going to be changed. But down in that area, Tibbetts specifically, but also, it's a small space to get a fire truck down, but, we will do that. The town of Fremont has a very large well house, if people don't know that, where we can refill trucks. It is it's up the street from there. But I would say those kinds of things, as well as cisterns and hydrants that have been developed, the closest one might be in Brentwood. I don't know.
Mill Pond, so it's less
There might
than
be one in this development we talked about. Oh, sorry. we haven't heard of the fire
Brentwood
department.
is one, there's a cistern in Mill Pond, but there's also a hydrant on Bean Road as well.
Okay,
Going in
and
the dam building.
the well house is,
So it would be a water shuttle
situation.
situation,
It would be a what?
a water shuttle situation.
Water
Where you
shuttle.
have multiple tankers coming in feeding.
I see.
It's not, generally, I would say, and there are certainly exceptions to this, but generally, building fires and those kind of things are not fought with floating pumps that are kind of thrown in the water. You do a lot of forestry operations that way. There are other solutions, and the fire department, will get it done. There might be some very unique situations where you would have done that and you wouldn't necessarily have that opportunity now, but with hydrants and the tanks that come, water in them, those kind of things, I don't know that that's a huge problem.
And then the last question in 5, and then we're on to the last combined group, which did 6 and 7, Yo Men's and Yo Women's work, 6 and 7 group. How have the towns of Fremont and Brentwood to date been involved in this issue? And is there any plan to get more deeply or differently involved in the future?
Look at me. So the town of Fremont, I have always felt that flood in 1996. I had been in Fremont a couple of years then, and I got to know, not a lot of those people are still here, some of them are. Door to door, I knew every resident on Tibbetts Road because we were going down there, myself and our police chief, our retired police chief, who I don't think is here tonight, door to door with bottled water, afterwards, but knocking on doors and getting people out of there because it was a time when, water was up to my waist by the time, not while I was we were getting people out ahead of time, but water was up to my waist. We were down there in civil defense 6x6 trucks, pulling people away, getting them out of boats, that kind of stuff. So I knew everyone who lived on that street. Over the years, we've been involved in a lot of things that have happened down there. It's a very small neighborhood. There's a lot of people in a small space. The town has obligations, obviously, to all of our residents. I think that we have taken an interest more recently in this just because it's, last year it was the drought, this year it's the dam malfunction, so to say. Our residents are all important. We have to worry about people's water. We're, everybody talks about the tax impact and all those kind of things. There's a vested interest in people being able to live on their properties and make use of it, whatever that is, whether it's with the dam there or not with the dam there. I think from the sentiment in this room and my sentiment from talking to people over the past 6 months or so about the particular issue, getting to know a lot of people last year who were in about the drought, the town is interested in having this go forward in a way that's productive for what homeowners want. It's not a municipal jurisdictional issue. I can't fix people's wells. I don't have any control over that dam in Brentwood. It's physically in Brentwood, but really most of the backlash, if you will, is in Fremont, because the impounded water makes Fremont flood far less than Brentwood. There's a lot of different impacts out there. I think one of the selectmen has been, and he's here, I'll get him to nod or say something, but has been, going to some of those homeowner meetings just to kind of keep a flavor of it. We're, two of my selectmen are here tonight. It matters to us because we're talking about 100 or 150 residents down there, I'm assuming. You know what I mean? There's only so much the town can do in terms of tax dollars. Whether there was a village district that gets into some kind of water supply, I don't know. So we've been involved kind of in the process. I think we get pulled into it because people have some assumptions that the town can do or should do certain things. That those feelings are out there. We held a meeting in May of this year where lots of folks who were sitting in this room came. We kind of really batted around a lot of information. It was productive in terms of people kind of, this is an emotional issue. It's not just about water, it's about property, it's about use of your property, it's about what you can do, it's about where you live and where you spend a lot of your time. And it's important. I think the town wants to be involved moving forward. I certainly can't sit here and pledge that we can fix it all, because that's not the case. But we're all in this for the long haul. There's no question about that.
Do either the selectmen or selectwomen want to say a word or two?
My name is Gene Cordes, and I've been involved with selectmen for a long time. And learning about dams is one of my initial experiences when residents were getting flooded and they're looking for coordination of dam opening and closing up and down the river, and finding out that we were at the mercy of those that own the water rights. And so very familiar with the issues, and it's and I know that this is an emotional issue for all the property owners. It's some people are getting blindsided by this. And when I started looking into it decades ago, I found out that there's a whole lot of information out there, and that the public has little control over it because the dam owners have all the rights and controls. And so, it started off back then about the previous owner of this dam draining the river down by opening it, and everybody being concerned because their views changed dramatically. And the best information we got then, or best advice we got then, came from the state, and they said you need to develop relationships with these property owners, these dam owners, and the rights they have, and be able to work with them. And so that's a little bit hit or miss. And in terms of, Heidi spoke well, and I will just say that whenever I talk to residents that are familiar with dams and things in our community, they for the $1 million you heard before, or the $500,000, or all the responsibility day to day, they say municipalities should stay away from that. And so that's what we hear over and over. And so we've always been reluctant to get any more involved and then try to enable what people want to accomplish in their homes or on their property. We are, cognizant of the fact that there can be long-term effects to property values, and that's, it's possible.
Was there one other select person here? Oh.
Yes.
You'll both wear green when you go out.
Well, we got to see that. No, I've been attending I'm the newest selectman. So I've been attending, some of the dam meetings, and as selectmen, town officials, we're very mindful of the impact on the residents. And as Heidi said, this isn't a municipal problem, but That's not to say, we want to wash our hands of it. We were very mindful, and I really see ourselves as being facilitators in terms of seeing what's going on the process, and if we can be helpful to move things along or have access to resources that we can put towards the homeowners, then we will help out.
Okay. Does the FERTA group have a short list of things they think the towns could be doing to be helpful? And has that been shared already?
We've got some ideas on what we'd like the towns to do. We have not shared them with the towns or anyone else yet.
That might be something that, that in the coming days could happen, at least so it could be evaluated by the local government.
Currently, we're storing ammunition before we make an ask.
Okay, moving right along. Let's go to table 6 and 7. And the first one is, Heidi talked, and the selectmen both comment on this, but if in the event the dam is either not repaired or removed, do you have some sense of what the likely impact would be on property values and property taxes? Some folks are under the impression that there is an extra surcharge for having recreational properties in the state of New Hampshire or in your local municipality, and might that be affected by the fact that the resource is diminished?
It might be. The properties in Fremont that are along the river are coded as riverfront. If the river stays there in some way, shape, or form, that coding may not change. What's going to ultimately change or affect property values is sales. So as we see, and I walk through this with people, I think individually, and I'm happy to do that, particular properties, if people want to do that, contact me at the office. But as we see sales change, if we find that properties are selling now for vastly different amounts, higher or lower, presumably lower if you lived in a waterfront and paid a lot of money for it because it was waterfront, and now it's trickling of a riverfront and a lot more grass kind of situation. As we see property values change, that will get caught up in an assessing cycle. So every 5 years, towns are required to have a revaluation, and in that process, we look at sales information, we look at information about houses. The assessor was in the field today doing quarterly reviews, checking homes, measuring information, checking the data. And in 2020, when we go to do our next revaluation, they will look at the prior 24 months worth of sales. Right now, those are not changing. I pulled about a dozen sales earlier in the day today because I was trying to prepare and make sure that I had enough information to talk about tonight with that. I did not see one sale that wasn't more than the current assessed value, and in some cases, $20,000 to $30,000 more than the current assessed value. Our assessment ratio is down right now, so that might mean that they're selling that at 100%, that they would be exactly in line with sales information. But that's what's going to drive that. So if you, in the coming years, if properties start to, or in the coming weeks, it does not happen instantly. If people find on an individual basis that they have a concern about their assessment of what their property's worth or what it's sold for, or what they just paid for it, those are individual things. I would encourage you to come down and see us, talk about it, get the card information, file for an abatement if that's something that is particular to your situation. As a whole, it's going to change when values start to change, when sales are drastically different, whether it's up or down, than they are right now. That's what changes. The assessing information is what people will, in an arm's length transaction, buy and sell property for.
There's a hand in the back.
Yeah, the way you determine is riverfront property. I had 15 feet from my yard to the river. Now it's over 100 yards.
That's
a riverside property?
That's a question for the assessor, and I'm sorry that I didn't come with that answer. I wasn't thinking ahead to that tonight. Check back in with me and I will try and find that out. If the river is there in some function, I think it's probably riverfront. How that might be as a multiplier in terms of value versus someone who is nowhere near, on a street that has no access to water whatsoever. I'm not really sure. I can look into that.
For me to get to the water,
now
I
you're
go
saying,
for knee-deep mud.
right. So it's
100 yards of it.
not waterfront, really.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, I understand. I don't have a better answer than that.
Okay, there was another question in this area, I think we touched on it a bit, and that is, what impact would the removal of the dam have upon the federal flood insurance premiums? I think it was a question of the local community, the citizens or the town could request a reevaluation of the flood maps by FEMA, and there may be a determination about whether or not you need flood insurance. Ellen pointed out that we still have the bridge there that's going to act as a fairly significant impediment, so that perhaps even more so than the dam. So we don't know what the outcome of that FEMA assessment would be.
Right.
Okay. Write that down. Ellen agreed with me. Hard to believe. All right, over here, last panel. We've done very well here. I don't know if we can cover this, we don't have a council present, but the item that got the most votes, and this is under the dam owner's legal responsibility, what would it mean for another entity, an association of residents, FERDA, or another group, et cetera, to actually be the owner of the dam? What are the legal responsibilities of a dam owner in the state of New Hampshire?
Based on the H&H analysis I did, this dam is very deficient in discharge capacity. So it's a significant hazard dam. There's a couple houses that we've identified downstream of it that it impacts. So it has to pass a 100-year flood with a foot of freeboard, or it needs to be designed for overtopping. It doesn't meet both of those criteria currently. As a significant hazard dam, the owner has to pay an annual dam registration fee of $750. The reconstruction application fee is $4,000 for a significant hazard dam. That's
for starters.
The bare bones.
Okay. Great.
There's actually a fact sheet on the DES website entitled Liability and Responsibility of Dam Owners, WDDB-10, if anybody wants to go to the website. If you just Google dam safety fact sheets, you'll find a link to this. But, and it outlines some of the general, so of course this isn't council, right, but general understanding of the liability of dam owners. Their first liability is to safety. Sometimes they can be liable for impacts of the dam, and sometimes they can have responsibility for personal liability. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in this to find this fact sheet, DD-10, at least give some guidance on that question.
And again, we have two questions. Again, we don't have counsel here, but I'll just read them, and if there is any comment on it. Questions, does the current owner have any legal responsibility for the loss of water for abutters and nearby property owners who've experienced difficulties following the failure of the dam's gate? Does he have any legal obligation to maintain the impoundment at a particular level? If so, who determines the level or volume of the impoundment? And then the second question, if the owner fails to meet his legal responsibility for maintaining the dam in good condition as laid out by New Hampshire law, negatively affecting nearby property owners, is there any enforcement tools available to the affected property owners to hold the owner accountable? So if I have a loss as a result of the failure of the gate, is there any court, body, entity, ombudsman that I can present my just claims to in the state of New Hampshire?
Well, I can say that the impoundment isn't a great pond. It's not a naturally occurring tension or pond or drainage. So
Can you speak up?
The impoundment is not considered a great pond. It's not on a great pond list in the state of New Hampshire. It's not a naturally occurring 10-acre pond or greater in size, so there is no obligation. from our perspective. And from a legal perspective, it's my understanding that the dam owner has flowage rights. So he has the right to control the water level that the dam impounds.
So in other words, there's nothing that the abutters of the river can do if their well goes dry.
I'm not sure. I'm not a lawyer, but I understand he has flowage rights. I'm not really sure.
Over here, and then we're going to do this. We've made good progress in getting through the shortlisted questions. All the other questions you raised, we will try to seek good answers and put them up on the website. We'll handle these 4 or 5 questions that are still out here, and then we'll still have a little bit of time. I thought Ellen actually suggested we give each of the experts to share anything that they feel, given the discussion, that would be most relevant and helpful to people. You don't have to say anything, you can pass, but we greatly appreciate, we know how busy you are, that you've come here tonight, middle of the week, to be here with us. It's an extraordinary measure of your agencies and your private firms that you would give up your free time in a meeting like this to spend with citizens. Great reflection on New Hampshire. So the folks who had their hands up, just want here, there was over there. So we'll do those 4, then we'll turn it over to the panelists for a final comment, if that's okay. Bruce?
It'll be a quick one, and it's a process question, and it's a legal question, and it's probably not something you can get into tonight, but it'd be nice to have some information. You guys come back with these questions, and so let's just make it a generic question. It's not about the Brentwood Dam, but it's just about the LLC that came along 10, 15 years ago, dug a neat on the dam. We formed this LLC called, for example, the worst decision in my life, called LLC. And they thought it'd be nice to go down there and sit and fish off the dam, and they didn't really do much more than just that for a period of 10 years. And then they get a letter from the deficiency from the Dam Bureau, and it says, hey, you're going to have to spend untold amount of money at this point. It's something you're required to do. So the LLC doesn't get any monetary gain from having made the purchase. And it's a huge liability. So the LLC just goes bankrupt. They hire Mr. Roberts to lead them through the bankruptcy process, and that's over and done with. They stop paying their taxes on the property. So in New Hampshire, what then happens, generally speaking, in the process of a tax sale, the town acquires property where the taxes are not paid. So this guy's just got moved off under the protection of bankruptcy. What does the state do? Do they just let that structure sit there forever? I mean, is that serious a problem? Somebody's going to have to do something. How does that work? In that hypothetical, not this situation, but hypothetical.
We got to talk to our attorney to find out the answer.
Yeah, and they won't, I'm sure, like, they're not going to give you an answer.
Well, our state attorney, we have our DES attorney.
But even if they don't give an opinion, do they give the process, and can you advise us of what that process would be? How the state will go after it?
I don't know. That's why I said I would talk. If I was, I'd have to talk to our attorney to find out what they would do in that situation.
Could you give us some broad overview when you come back with questions, answers to questions about that?
Yeah.
So we'll follow up on that question, and we'll post whatever we get through the courtesy of the state agency on the website. Okay, over here.
Actually, kind of to piggyback on that comment. I mean, obviously the dam has been unmaintained in the proper value of, according to the state, for some amount of years now. Isn't there some kind of fine or punishment for that? For all legal responsibilities of owning a dam, to have it be neglected, as I'll put it, because there's no safety fences around it, the gate is inoperable. If you go down there, it has some patchwork on it. It's obviously been, not maintained by the owner the way that it should be. I mean, what are they punishable by fine in any kind of way? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. This dam went under FERC's jurisdiction in the 80s when it became a hydropower dam, although I don't know if it was ever functional. And they just lost their license in January, so now it's under our jurisdiction. We produce this letter of deficiency with dates to meet certain tasks, and if they don't meet those, then we go after them with fines.
Okay. And that won't be a problem, even though they're based out of Maine and, because I think I heard that somewhere.
You're right.
Yeah, they're based in Maine, that's not a problem to come into New Hampshire courts or anything.
So I think that gets to the question that Stephen had about
Exactly.
what would happen with the
You
LOC.
can find anybody, anyone taking the court.
Whether you pay it or not.
Bottom line is they're bankrupt, they're feeling their responsibility. And that's, in all honesty, you don't want to say that, but that, all the information you gain here, and from meeting with the attorney back in July, over the course of it, that seemed like that was the way. Mr. Roberts did make a disclaimer, he's not a bankruptcy attorney, because there was one for a couple of streets over.
But he plays one on TV, that's what I heard.
Okay.
No. Okay, in the back.
We have some residents from Brentwood that are here that I just want to make sure they have an opportunity to express any questions, burning desires, or get any feedback from this host of panelists. So, you know that.
Yeah, I guess my question is sort of multifaceted. It's like, and anyone can answer this, like what are the pros and cons looking at? I know there's issues in Fremont that you guys are dealing with now, but what are the, downsides to the dam staying up, or the pros to the dam staying up for Brentwood? Like how does it affect downstream water quality? If the dam failed, what would it do? People downstream, or what are the issues with that?
There's about 2 houses that'll be affected.
Well, from
No,
these
that's
people is what
upstream.
I'd be really
He's
interested in
talking
hearing
about downstream from the dam.
Yeah, downstream, there's about 2 houses. in
Because the
Brentwood
river
that are
goes
in
all the
striking
way
distance.
Oh, I
to,
see.
Exeter, so.
I'll just try to sum it up. It's a very interesting meeting, by the way. You gotta look at each dam as different. Exeter looked at it from what Exeter's perspective was. First of all, we're ahead of the tide dam, which means we're at the confluence of the tidal saltwater and the last drops in freshwater. So we had to look at it in a different, we had to look at it from our perspective. This process in Exeter started 10, 12 years ago. It took a long time to arrive at a decision. And we had to work with the Dam Bureau, and because they had issued us a letter of deficiency back in 2004, I think. So whatever you do, every situation is different. You need to weigh the pluses and the minuses. You're gonna have to look at them. You're gonna have to figure what they are. You're gonna have to get some, maybe expert information. It's, the decision you make is you're not gonna be able to go back 2 years from now and say, I should have done it differently. It's probably a once-in-a-lifetime decision, financially and environmentally. So it's something you need to make sure, emotion is gonna play a role in it, there's no question. You better try to separate that out and look at it from, the factual case. It's not gonna be a short decision. It really isn't.
As the town circuit rider planner in Brentwood, the Board of Selectmen did ask me to look into this very question when they were offered the opportunity of whether it was wise for them to think about purchasing the dam. And I talked with folks at the Dam Bureau, I think it might have been you, Charlie, several months ago. And it is definitely a case-by-case issue, and I think, I'm not speaking for the Board of Selectmen, but I think from Brentwood's perspective, the wiser thing is reverting back to the natural flows without the dam. Because I don't think that there's a net benefit to the town of having the dam. In my 30 years in town, the only time I ever heard about the dam was in the flood instances that we talked about with the history of the dam. And it wasn't a joyous occasion in any of those, that there was failure of the dam and much greater damage downstream than would have existed if the dam had been, if the river had been free flowing. So I know that there are different perspectives on the Fremont side of this issue.
Okay, here in the front row, and then Rob, and then we'll
Can I just
do...
add to that comment as a Brentwood resident?
Sure.
For 2 seconds. I think Glenn has a good point, and to your point, it's not just the 2 houses. Actually, everyone that enjoys the river downstream could potentially have an impact as well, whether it's from flooding or other instances. And so it's the whole downstream community also, whether the water is just free flowing all the time, or whether it's dammed up for most of the season and just gets a bigger flush during big flood events. And so I would, again, just encourage, I mean, we're very sympathetic to what's going on in Fremont, obviously, and, can't even imagine running out of water and things like that. But, there is the bigger perspective also that those of us that don't live on the impoundment are looking at as well.
So about that, I have pictures of before and after, and the pictures I've seen of the closest area to the dam where you'd expect to see the most change in water levels, no change. So when you say the community downstream other than those two houses could be affected, how? If the river is the same level now that has been free flowing for a year or since April, and before when the dam was functioning, what is the effect other than the flooding?
There could be lots of positive effects. The way that dams hold back sediments and then they release them, flushing them through, that's not a healthy system. When they're going through naturally, much better for the whole ecology of the system. So there's potentially lots of positive benefits, ecologically speaking, for a free flowing river. And Exeter is starting to see that with their dam removal. And so that's a thing to think about too. It's not just the negative impacts that are an issue here. It's the potential positive impacts that we could be thinking about. So
Well, I guess what I'm saying, same
John
level,
said,
what's the
think about
positive?
The pros and the cons. It's not just about the negative things we're going to be facing with either side. It's the positives from either option.
Yeah, but specifically, what are the positives? If you get the same water level, you're saying you get better
Water level is
soil
like one
distribution.
thing. So there's the way the soil and nutrients move through a system that affects fish and everything up, and plant life and all of that stuff.
Effects is kind of vague.
There's no free exchange in the river
So
with the dam in
we
place.
have,
The ecosystem has changed with the dam.
But as far as the impact to the two houses immediately below the dam, it's a high hazard because in the event of a dam failure,
Yeah.
they'll certainly be impacted. Of course, with a dam in place with high flows, you are correct. The river's no different than a dam there, a dam not there once you get below that spillway.
Yeah,
I
as the
think we're
dam
always talking
failure.
about, if the dam failed during an event, those two houses, there could be other damage and flooding damage below. I think that's what you meant. And then back to the point about, I think you talked about, when you remove the dam, you restore the river back to a more natural flow regime. So you have sediment transport, potentially more increased fish passage, increased water quality. So I think those are some of the other things Brentwood is thinking about that would benefit their section of the stream in their town. It's not necessarily just the property issues. I think they may be talking about the environmental benefits.
we had the woman in the front, who's been patiently waiting. We get the last lick, and then we'll go across the,
This is our river. This is not my river, it's not your river, it's our river. It was put here for recreation, for beauty, for participation, for those who fished, and for those who wanted to live on the river. And we know, Heidi, that all of those assessments are going to be going down on the river. We know, as a realtor, I know the values are going to go down. We all know that. It's not about that. It's not about our taxes. It's part of it, but it is a river. It's a beautiful river. And what I fail to see here is that every municipality has a responsibility from the time that river leaves the mountains and starts heading to the sea. We all want to preserve it and keep it live and healthy and well, and providing recreation. We all benefit from it. So my question is, municipalities, why is the perception that municipalities don't have more responsibility in the guardianship of this river? Why is it up to me, a neighbor, or me, I'm on the river, I abut 107 and all of, like 3 acres right on the river. Why would it be me? Why would it be John? Why would it be all of the people in Fremont? Why isn't all of us wanting to preserve this river? And you have the power, municipalities do, to take ownership of that.
Well, one obvious answer to that is the cost is, presently, you're looking at a dam that has never been a municipal responsibility. It's always been a privately owned dam. And now it appears that since there's going to be some responsibility for making the dam a proper dam if it's going to continue to exist, that's why would that be a reasonable responsibility for a municipality to take on when it was never their responsibility to begin with? If you talk about rivers being from their source in the mountains to the sea, well, that's as a free-flowing natural entity. So that would argue for no dam, which I don't think is probably your personal perspective. So you're right, it's all our responsibilities, but it isn't the same impact for, the impacts aren't the same for all of us.
So if this was a polluted river like the Merrimack, coming out of and going down through the state of New Hampshire and out to the ocean, it took every city to clean up their sewer situation. Every city. And now the Merrimack River, you can canoe in it, you could swim in it. It's a beautiful, beautiful recreational river because every municipality took ownership. We're just a small little chunk of the Exeter River and the whole river system. And we could say, okay, we've never had this responsibility. Well, maybe we haven't, but why not take responsibility for keeping this river healthy? We've lost our ecosystem right now. So I'm just saying, why aren't municipalities more involved? You're going to lose taxes on all of those river 150 whatever homes are. You're going to lose income. So it is going to impact Brentwood. It is going to impact Fremont. I'm sure it impacted Exeter in ways that we don't know. Anyway, that's just my thought to think about.
We're going to turn to Rob, who recruited this whole panel, so we're going to give him a chance to say a word, and then we're going to just go down the row here, go down the front table. People want to make final comments.
I mean, I'd like to just respond to this lady who has a great point from the Brentwood perspective. The town has taken an incredible responsibility for the river as a resource in town and in the greater Great Bay community. I mean, as a member of the Conservation Commission, we have gone out of our way. We're doing water quality testing through our planning board to see the quality coming in and out and what the impact of town is. We've conserved tons of land to act as filters so that water quality is improved, because we are responsible to Exeter downstream from us and all the other communities. As far as a privately owned dam, we haven't looked into that because it's privately owned, but as far as protecting the resource, we've gone out of our way. So it's a great point you're making.
So we'll start with Don, since he looked like he had his mouth open anyway, and then we'll go right down the list.
I need to be able to spend some money on Exeter. I have budget meetings going on. But to answer your question, some municipalities have taken, as Rob says, we in Exeter right now are putting in a brand new wastewater treatment plant, a sewer plant. $50 million, which is on the saltwater portion of the Exeter River, the Squamscott. So we as a municipality, and its taxpayers, ratepayers, have really stepped up because they understand the necessity to make sure the river is clean. But again, as I said before, it's every dam, every situation is different in a dam. You're going to have to look at, we had the luxury in Exeter of only having to deal with Exeter. You get two towns. And I would hope, I think the two towns have mutual interest, I think, to gain by this. Working together. And this is what, I'll put a plug in, Bill Wright, for Exeter Squamscott Local River Advisory Committee. This is what we try to do. We try to cross municipality boundaries. We try to look at the river as a whole, from all the way in that first little spring in Wetland and Chester, all the way to the Great Bay. So look at it that way. Thank you. I appreciate it. So,
thanks, Don. Mike?
Thanks very much. Oh, thank you.
I'm just going to say that, so Fish and Game typically doesn't really weigh in as far as a municipality choosing whether the dam stays or goes. However, we're going to be supporting what makes the most ecological sense, and we look forward to feasibility studies and more looking into exactly how the river will respond, dam out, dam in, and we're going to support what makes the most ecological sense.
An ecosystem is where the balance in this case and and your ecosystem could be a pond, it could be a river. So there's no loss or gain from having an impoundment or having a river system. as long as the water quality is good. And as Mike had mentioned, we're going to weigh in on the basis of what's better for the organisms and the ecosystem as a whole during the permitting process.
In addition to, impacts on everybody's water supply, which is a really big issue, there's no question about that. As Rob said, the planning board has been looking at water quality over the last couple of years, and I've been the fortunate one to actually take the samples for surface water, and one of our sampling points is at the river, right at the bridge. And we noticed this year when we were taking samples in May, the dramatic difference in the way the river flowed. It was all impounded, very slow moving, very warm compared to now where it's a free-flowing river. So the temperature has gone down, it's much cooler. It is free-flowing, the dissolved oxygen levels are higher. It's only really 2 years to compare, but that's a positive from a water quality perspective. So, as the river continues to flow more freely, I think the water quality will continue to improve as well.
Mr. Smith?
I suspect the well situation will not change for the better without the dam impound area being refilled. Those people that have good wells that still produce a reasonable amount of water are probably not going to do their wells any harm if they share as a short-term help your neighbor out thing. If the well won't support 2 homes, it will not support 2 homes. But if somebody's got a 300-foot well that produces 50 gallons a minute, by sharing that water, they're not doing themselves any harm.
I do.
We can.
I share toilet water.
You share toilet water?
Yeah, I give it to them. They come with the big blue buckets.
As a short-term solution, you can run garden hoses from house to house and hook them up to the house, and they'll have running water in their plumbing.
We've done that. We did that last year.
We do that
with our
frequently in
next door
emergency
neighbor.
situations.
Yeah.
We can set up temporary water supplies. I would suspect if anybody here tonight said, good, drill me a well, it's probably at absolute best and more realistically 2 or 3 weeks before you've got running water. Drill rig shows up on site, the permits are done. If we have lot loading issues and if it looks like there's going to be a bunch of wells that need to be drilled, it probably makes sense to drag DES in and look at the lot loading issues and just make sure we're not going to push back real hard.
When you say lot loading, what do you mean?
Septic lot loading. The lot only allows so much in, so much out. It's not something that I get involved in very often because frequently we don't get into these little tiny lots that become an issue. The times we do get involved in is if this whole area was a community system that we talked about, the community system went away, all of a sudden the state looks at it and says, look, we only approved all of these little tiny lots because they had a community water system. We're kind of going backwards of that, but it would probably warrant getting some involvement from the water well and the DES subsurface.
Okay.
I just want to point out, there's been comments about there's money for removal and no money for repairs, but the reality is, I work with removal projects. There's no guarantee there's removal money either. That's all typically all grant-funded money. It's only what's available for grants, and it's only if the project competes well against other projects. So there's no guarantee the owner will receive any removal money from other agencies as well to do removal. It's really, if that's a priority project for other resource agencies and there's funding available potentially, but typically is a match for the owner for removal. So there's not like a pool of money just sitting there. The state has no budget for removal. We don't provide any funding. We only provide guidance and help them through the permitting process and coordinate projects. We have no funding for removals. It's just we can help them find other grant sources of funding for doing that work. And even the ARM funding that was mentioned before for Exeter, that money comes through the Wetlands Bureau and through DES, but it's really paid by private developers that have impacted wetlands that pay into a fund for that. So that's not even really state money. That's money that's being passed through the state because of the state and federal wetlands permitting process.
Great, thank you. Charlie?
I guess I want to make clear I don't advocate for dam removal nor reconstruction. We talked about this in the first meeting, that the state of New Hampshire owns 280 dams, and we operate and maintain them, and it's a burden to us. But there is a process to pass on the deed or title of a dam to the state. It's a lengthy process. I can't say whether or not it would go through in this case, but if you can find a local representative to sponsor a bill, that's outlined on the town of Fremont's website, kind of the guidelines on doing that. For the people that really want the dam, you should move forward with that process.
We can name it after him or her. It's a joke.
The bill.
Charlie, anything else?
That's it.
Our fellow planner here?
I should probably just keep my mouth shut. I'll just say, as a land use planner and a natural resource planner for 30 years, I've looked to find information about the ecological benefits of retaining a dam over removing the dam. And I've got to say, all the literature that I've seen is that it's healthier for the removal of the dam. And I'm sure that there must be instances, I whispered the question to Charlie a while ago, and I'm sure there are instances where ecologically it's healthier to keep the dam, but I've not been able to see that. And I've never had anyone be able to show me that information. So my perspective is very different than a number of you sitting in this room. So I just think that the removal of the dam is the right thing to do.
How long do you plan on keeping your position?
It's, you know, it's at the will of the Brentwood Board of Selectmen and Planning Board.
So you intend to stay in your position indefinitely?
Well, moving right along, I would point out that human beings are part of ecosystems too. And we have 150 abutters who are being affected in a pretty dramatic way, and they have to be counted along with all of our other organisms as we look at this situation. So we need to keep that in mind as well.
Oh, I'm very mindful of that.
Yeah, so just as a brother planner. And Heidi, you get the last word.
So I want to thank you guys for putting this whole thing together. I think that this has been probably a very productive, I'm sure there's a lot more questions. You folks know where I am. I appreciate the information. I've learned a lot of both of these kind of sessions we have, as well as having talked to folks like Ellen and the folks at DES, learning a lot about the process and trying to understand. The town, I think the town of Fremont has always wanted to be able to have open lines of communication, be able to talk to our residents, work with people about what's going on here. This is a big proposition here. No matter how you look at it, this is a huge undertaking, one way or the other. And we're all in this. So keep talking to us and let us know what's going on. And thank you all of you for being here.
We have just two quick things. In terms of the follow-up, up on the slide, we have visit the Exeter Swampscott River Educational Partnership website, which is the famous I'llBeDamnedOrNot.com website. And in a week, we'll have a written summary of the questions and answers. If we get something that you think we got it wrong, we may need a little assistance in becoming better planners, so just shoot us an email and say, I think you misheard that, we'll check the videotape. We will also have the videotape posted on the website, so if you had neighbors who weren't able to make it, or your wife or husband had to leave early because they have childcare, or their teachers, they can check out the website. And then the questions we didn't get to tonight, which you took the time to share with us in your living rooms or out in your back deck. It's a beautiful area. And we want to thank the folks at Furter for being so welcoming. We got free lunch before we actually did anything in the neighborhood, which is always a good deal, thanks to John and company. The additional questions, 30 days, we'll try to track down good responses on those things that we didn't discuss tonight. And so just keep checking that webpage. And the last thing I just want to do is some special thanks. We wanted to thank the dam owner. He wasn't able to send a representative, but he was actually quite forthcoming and agreeable to provide some additional information in the future. And I think that's not always the case. We want to thank our panel of experts for, as I say, New York. And then, Heidi and her sister town administrator in Brentwood for dealing with the endless questions that we generate. And the Rockingham Regional Planning Commission, which helps staff, Ezra Lack provide staff support. And our brothers and sisters at Fremont Pizza, official pizzeria of the UMass School for the Environment. And we also have, we should have put it up there, the ice cream parlor in Fremont, which is called what?
Stillwater.
Which is the official ice cream parlor of the UMass planning program, if we could designate that. And we also want to thank the Brentwood Recreation staff for not only making the fields available, but being so faithful, they even gave us a damn key to the building, which I'm from New York, I couldn't believe it.
I would just like to formally thank Ken and Ellen and all the students here that did all this work out.
Bill asked us if we would, at the end of this process, keep tracking it, we're happy to do that, do a little write-up about what we learned, trying to come together on something that is a very, very difficult issue to resolve. And I think one of the extraordinary things about this community is people's willingness to sit down in a civil manner, something that some of our other national leadership doesn't seem to be able to do, and try to find a win-win situation or outcome. So we're going to do a little case study of what we've learned along the way. We'll probably be bothering John and folks from Ferda in the town to reflect on what we thought the lessons are, because you mentioned how many dams are there just in New Hampshire?
2,600.
2,600. We've got this situation all over the country. And the truth is, when we started down this path, there wasn't a lot of guidance as to how to bring people together across municipal lines with regional entities and state entities to find a good outcome. So we're going to try to share the experience of your community so it can be helpful in lighting the way for other communities as they perhaps push it a little bit further. Just want to thank you. And that's it. We're done.
Yeah, let's leave.